Is there even any value in watching this video?
I wanted to talk about what is going on with Israel. It's kind of crazy. Obviously, like, the American reaction to students protesting against Israel has been insane. Somewhat expected, but still kind of insane. How aggro they are, how much they're flailing. Like, all you need to do is just go out there and be a voice, and people still lose their minds. They're like, this is unhinged. Like, we have to arrest you. We have to do everything we can. Having said that, Israel is also being
We have to kill. Wait, how many protesters have been killed so far? What?
unimaginably unhinged simultaneously, just doing Israel. There's been a ceasefire negotiation process with a lot of back and forth for some time now. Israel is the party that has been ruining the ceasefire terms. I know that it takes two to tango, but for the most part, I would say that Hamas's conditions have been endlessly reasonable. Israel...
We did a huge attack. We've got a bunch of hostages. We want you to release every single prisoner you've ever captured of ours, even if you've convicted of them of like murder and shit. You need to release all of them, and then we'll give you back the bodies of like the hostages that we have left. And then also 10-year ceasefire. So reasonable. Endlessly reasonable. This is retarded. Why am I even wasting my time?
Israel's reaction has been anything but. Now, of course, if you look at the American news coverage, the Western media's coverage on the issue, you would basically come up with an entirely different, perhaps the exact opposite of what is the truth. So basically, what I'm trying to say is the media is presenting what is actually happening, looking at what is actually happening, and just presenting the exact opposite. The exact opposite. The thing is, like, the final stage of this ceasefire agreement...
Can you give us an example? Can he read an article that he thinks is misreporting this, or he's giving a bad take on this? I would be so curious. Has Hasan ever read a full news article on stream before? Does he do that? I'd be curious to actually see that happen.
Is basically what Hamas has said, I would say, since like October 8th. We will give you all the hostages back. You just have to issue a permanent ceasefire, 1967 boundaries, come to the negotiation table with the 1967 boundaries, which would obviously be like the two-state solution. No more arms. We will lay down our arms. Basically a day one position, which Israel routinely said no to. And it turns out that there's more information about Benjamin...
Yeah, you don't reach a final negotiation on what the territorial dispute should look like at the end in response to the largest terror attack ever in your country and 200 hostages taken. That's not how any of this works. That's not how any of this works.
Netanyahu almost personally ruining...
Who is his editor? Hey, Hasan's editor, dipshit. There should be a rule that you can't cut in an article title if Hasan has never even looked at the article in his life. Are there any things of him actually reading any of these? Does this actually happen? Like...
He said no to, and it turns out that there's more information about Benjamin Netanyahu almost personally ruining the bag. There's basically no condition that Israel wants. None whatsoever that Israel is willing to agree to. I think the latest that I read was in this round of conversations, basically they claimed that like the Hamas acceptance was coming from an Egyptian envoy, and Egypt is also Hamas. Well, they didn't say that, but they said that the Egyptian terms were like infinitely softer than what the Israel would be down for or something. And this is after Hamas agreed to the latest proposal presented by Israel on April 27th. And there's no change in its elements. An official matter with the talks tells Reuters. Okay, this is like literally happening as we're talking. And there's no change in its elements. An official...
Hamas agreed to the latest proposal presented by Israel on April 27th, and there is no change in its elements. An official familiar with the talks tells Reuters on May 6th, but that's not true. It was significantly different, and they didn't agree with the Israeli proposal. Who the fuck is this guy? Who is this guy? What is he reporting? An official familiar with the talks tells Reuters. That wasn't true, right? The Hamas proposed ceasefire was significantly different. And Israel wasn't even a party to this particular one, I don't believe. Hamas said Monday it accepted an Egyptian Qatari. It was these two guys that had negotiated a ceasefire proposal, but Israel said the deal did not meet its core demands, and it was pushing ahead with an assault on the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Israel said to continue negotiations. Okay, I don't know who this guy is on Twitter, but okay.
Matter with the talks tells Reuters. Okay, this is like literally happening as we're talking. And the only thing that I've seen from Israel is that although it is their proposal, they no longer actually feel comfortable with it. And
give evidence of that. Can he source that? So Hamas, this is a big claim. Hamas is accepting Israel's proposal. So Israel proposed something, Hamas accepted, and then Israel said, no, fuck you. If that happened, you should have an article or something. You should have a strong source to that. That's a really strong claim. I haven't seen that reported anywhere else in the media. What is the source for that claim?
And are saying that maybe Egypt has softened that deal too much. Let's be real. The Israeli officials are saying the proposal Hamas accepted is different than the one initially presented to Israel. Yeah, it's a three-stage peace plan, three-stage ceasefire negotiation, as Time with Anonovia also mentioned here. First stage is like the facilitation of the hostage swaps, right? Which would mean prisoner releases from the Israeli side as well, including some high-profile prisoners. Second stage would be...
I like how he just brushes over that as well, by the way, that a hostage swap is such a cowardly, dishonest fuck way to present this. God, I hate this piece of shit. It's not a hostage swap. They want to take hostages that they captured in the process of committing war crimes, and they want to trade them for prisoners in Israel. That's not a hostage swap. The idea that both sides have taken hostages here and they're swapping them is so unbelievably fucking dishonest. I'm beyond this. I don't know why I would even waste my time watching this. I'm good. I don't even do this. Okay. There's other stuff. Hold on. We got comedy videos. I'd rather watch incel bait. Oh boy. Oh my god. The man, the myth, the legend. What's up?
Yo.
What's up? How you doing?
Are you busy doing a thing now, or did you want to have a quick chat about something?
God, no, I'm not busy. Today's been so boring. What's up?
Yeah, I just wanted to check in generally about, like, what are your thoughts, generally speaking, of these student demonstrations and the subsequent, like, social media discourse?
I mean, I think the demonstrations are cringe, obviously, because I'm anti the Hamas shit. But I mean, I think you have a right to protest. But I mean, if you're breaking rules, especially on college campuses, then you should get kicked out. Yeah, that's about it. What about what else?
Well, I mean, like, a question that I've been asking, like, there's been some people in my chat that have been, like, heavily lobbying for the students and kind of taking the approach of the only people that initiated violence have been the cops, and everything's been basically 100% peaceful, and the only aggression came from counter protesters and this sort of thing. And, like, I guess we were just kind of getting into a discussion about what counts as, like, non-violent. Like, would you consider...
Just as a real quick, I don't care. Whether or not the aggression is started by the cops is not really relevant. Cops are not civilians that can only respond with violence to other violence. Cops are here to enforce the laws. So if you're breaking a law, regardless of whether or not you're engaged in violence or not, a cop has the right to remove you, and that could escalate to some sort of violent removal. If I'm trespassing on somebody's property, maybe I'm standing in their yard and they tell me to leave, and I say, no, fuck you, and then the cops come and they're like, you need to leave, and I'm like, no, fuck you. That cop is going to become violent even if I'm completely nonviolent. That doesn't mean that I'm in the right and the cop's in the wrong. Like, cops have authority to use violence to enforce our laws. So
yeah. Yeah, it just kind of logically follows. Like, the people are like, well, violence didn't break out until the cops showed up. It's like, well, yeah. Like, if nobody's challenging these kids in their assertion over these spaces, then of course there's not going to be any violence. It's just them asserting that space. It's just when the people whose job it is to reassert that space for the campus show up, like, obviously they're going to, if they tell you, like, hey, you have 10 minutes to leave, otherwise we're going to start making arrests, and you don't move. I don't necessarily feel too bad if they, like, physically pull you away.
Yeah, of course.
I think we've seen some instances where the cops, like, pretty, like, cut and dry just use too much force, and it's fine to call that out, but the simple act of pulling someone away, that to me is not on the level as, like, the Kent State or whatever.
Yeah, no.
And just a fun little way to, like, test people's moral consistency, and it's something that I've been asking some people in my chat, is if the roles were reversed, and if these were pro-Zionist protesters, and they were setting up encampments and blocking freedom of movement for pro-Palestinian protesters, how would you feel about it? Would you be okay with cops coming in and breaking it up? And some people have dishonestly tried to say, like, yeah, I'd be fine with that, but I just flat out don't believe them. And so that's been kind of a useful tool to push back. Like, I generally support the right to protest, but
yeah, I mean, you just can't be breaking any of the laws or rules while doing it, right? Yeah. And for college campuses, it's generally going to be like a means, time, and a place or whatever for what they're allowed to protest as. Yeah. Like, you can't be barricading yourself into libraries.
I don't even necessarily have a problem inherently with people doing civil disobedience. So if you're breaking rules or breaking laws, like, there's a rich tradition of that in this country.
That's fine. But part of civil disobedience is getting arrested.
Yeah, exactly. Accept the consequences. Like, if a cop shows up to arrest you and you start picking up, like, sliced up garbage bins as a shield, then we're just well beyond what, and I'm specifically referring to, like, the nonviolent civil rights movement. And the other interesting angle to all of this is, like, everybody is always so horny to compare their current moment or their current movement to
the most noble, righteous movements they can ever think of. Yeah.
Dude, people were comparing themselves to the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
And what I find really interesting is that even though the more militant civil rights protesters of the 60s and 70s, like the Black Panthers, they were a secular leftist organization, so they aligned with the PLO. But a lot of these civil rights leaders, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, were Zionists.
Sure.
Like Rosa Parks signed a letter along with 200 other civil rights leaders, like hella affirming the right for Israel to exist and basically blaming the Arab states for the violence that broke out in that region because they just refused to acknowledge that Israel had a right to exist. And so
Sure.
just these people are just not. It just blows my mind. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like if you're going to invoke civil rights leaders, you should probably like check to see if they would have backed the current protests. And it's unclear if they would have.
Yeah, for sure. Also, keep in mind, people alive in like the 50s and 60s are going to be a lot more, not even that they're necessarily smarter, more educated, but like what's happening in Israel and Palestine, like the facts of what's being reported are going to be more realistic to them as well. Like they're going to be hearing about the wars and the aggression and everything. Whereas today, the general idea amongst kids in college campuses is that like Israel, basically a bunch of Jews kind of went to the Middle East and they started kicking out Palestinians and they nakbad like 700,000 of them for no reason. And then they just started like killing everybody around them. And that's like the whole history of Israel and the Middle East. And if you think that, then it's no wonder that you fucking hate them. But if you were like alive in the 50s, 60s, obviously you're hearing a lot more stuff going on. So it's a much more dynamic situation.
Yeah. And by the time this group, it's called BASIC. It was Black Americans in Support of Israel Committee, and they shortened it to BASIC. They took out a full page ad in the New York Times in 1975. So this was after the initial like 48 partition. This is after the 67 war. This is a full 8 years after the 67 war. And you had 200 civil rights leaders signing onto this letter, like really strongly affirming their support for Israel, drawing a parallel between their cause and the cause of Jewish people that have faced anti-Semitism for like centuries. So this was like, yeah, well beyond like the 67 war. So like they knew what was up. And if they're still like at that point saying, you know, this is mostly on Arab countries for not recognizing them. So anyways, yeah, the whole thing has been like pretty frustrating for me because during the BLM riots, like I kind of kept my mouth shut. Like I didn't like seeing the riots, but I felt this like social pressure to not say anything about it. And I've taken the opposite kind of stance this time. And I just like told myself I'm not going to repeat the same mistake. And so I've been getting like a little pushback within my community, and that's kind of interesting for me. But yeah, no, I just wanted to get your general thoughts.
Yeah,
like,
I would
find
say
this
that like
whole
anybody that
movement
asks me about this,
fascinating.
I don't think there is anything about any protest in the United States that demands a unique analysis. I think it would be the exact same for everything. For BLM, when they were protesting in the streets, I 100% supported it. If they wanted to break curfew and they were willing to get arrested for it, I 100% supported it. When they start rioting, it's time to go and get arrested, and whatever the fuck needs to happen to get you the fuck out, you shouldn't be rioting. In January 6th, if you want to surround the Capitol building and protest and scream and have signs and everything, that's your right to do so. You know, if you want to march down whatever the fuck and scream and protest, that's your right to do so. But when you start breaking into the building, now your ass is getting tossed outside or arrested, right? And then same thing with these protests. Yeah, you want to protest in the United States, you've got a right to do it. And I think you should have that right to do it. It should be protected. But once you start breaking laws and shit, yeah, you're going to get tossed out or you're going to get arrested. None of these situations are unique. None of them demand a unique analysis. Like, none of them are significantly different from one to the other, I think.
Yeah, Bernie came out recently and went to the press and was basically like, Biden needs to be careful not to have a Vietnam moment with these protests.
Yeah.
And there's a huge difference between what happened at Kent State and what's happening now. And there was a really interesting moment at the end of the Biden press conference from like 2 or 3 days ago when he basically did it. It was like the most anodyne political. I don't know if you saw that press conference, but he just went out there and affirmed First Amendment right to protest and denounced violence. That's like 90% of Americans have this position. Like you should be allowed to demonstrate, but if you disrupt things, if there's just a complete lack of like order, if there's total lawlessness, then most people don't like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But when he was on his way out, somebody asked him like, "Are you thinking about sending in the National Guard?" And he like very strongly said no. So where we're at now is just nowhere close to the level of unrest and violence that we saw in the anti-war movement in the 70s, which makes sense. Like back then, people had a personal stake in it. There was a draft.
Yeah.
We were directly involved in that conflict.
Yeah.
I just think it's so fucking cringe for like any kind of current movement it's like this compulsion to compare yourself to
Always the most
what are now in
extreme shit.
hindsight, seen as like these righteous causes. The whole thing is fucking cringe, but yeah, anyways,
Well,
that's kind of it, buddy. I'll talk to you later.
I love you. Be careful. Stay safe. Okay.
Have a good one.
Bye.